Welcome to Being at Home with George. And as we usually do, I like to talk about the possibility of embracing whatever comes up, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever, just whatever comes up, to embracing that and generating the hope. And today I'd like to talk about the second part of that, the generating hope. He's doing some research on happiness, Shawn Achor's work, and he talks about how we can predict performance, how we're going to do in a job or an activity, and that there's three things that are involved in that. He talks about the first thing being positive genius, or what I would call generating hope, faith, and optimism. The second thing he talks about is social support. So that means having people that support us that are able to help us with our blind spots. And in some traditions, like in the Buddhist teaching tradition, we call teachers good friends. And then when we get together as a group, just like we do on my online course, is social support around teachings having a way of being and exploring how to do it, not just individually, but collectively, how to support each other to do the right thing, how to support each other to really be willing to be ourselves and to be vulnerable enough to actually learn and grow, not just individually, but collectively. And the third thing is how we confront a stressful situation or crisis. And the idea is, if you see it as, there's two meanings to crisis. One is danger, the other one is opportunity. And if you can see it as an opportunity, there's a lesson to be learned there. If you have the growth mindset, then that changes it. So those three things, positive genius, or just generating the hope as we talk about it, the hope, the faith, and optimism, and then having social support, people to support us as we are, and then seeing things as a challenge, reframing things and seeing the silver lining, you might say. So it's those three things can predict how we're going to perform or how we're going to experience. So I like to talk about performance like I have this intention of performing a certain way. So it means I'm able to execute, but it also means that my experience is going to be a good one. So sometimes I look at performance as the experience of being fully alive, feeling like we've been able to be creative and engage in the activity, or I would say full deployment of ourselves, self-expression. That would be really helpful. And there's a little practice that I've been engaged in with clients over the years, and it's what I call catch yourself or someone else doing something right. And so we live in this society that is very much focused on pathology, on what's wrong, and we're really good at analyzing what's wrong, and we focus on what we need to fix or what's not right. And it's helpful to generate the hope by looking at what's right, catching ourselves doing something right, and understanding that the research says that 90% of our long-term happiness is predicated on how the nervous system interprets our experience. So if you think about it that way, you think about this idea, if we're in a positive mind state, or what Shawn Achor calls positive genius, if we can generate positive thoughts, it helps us with what they call the Broaden and Build Theory, which actually says that when we're at positive, we see things more clearly and we're less reactive and we have a panoramic view. We don't get stuck in tunnel vision. And so we just operate better. The nervous system operates better. So if 90% of our long-term happiness is predicated on how we interpret our experience, we definitely need to focus on what's right and find that silver lining in the cloud. And also to understand that we don't really have neutral thoughts. Thoughts are either helpful or unhelpful. So if we focus and think about what we can do and catching ourselves and others doing something right, then we also can focus on what we can control. And so I can't control what happens to me, but if I can create space between stimulus and response, then in that space we have the freedom and power to choose. And why not choose the good? Why not choose what we want, what we're interested in, instead of focusing on what we don't want, what we're not interested in? So I'm not talking about denial or blame. I'm really talking about seeing the glass as half full, half empty. Both are right on some level, but if I see it as half full, now I'm in that positive mindset. I'm in that hope, optimism, and faith. If I see it as half empty, now I'm in survival mode. I'm coming from that fixed mindset that says that things are this way and they're never going to change. There's nothing I can do. And so we have to be able to just think about things in a way that help us connect with what's right, to focus on what we want to do. And it's interesting because yesterday, just as an example of this, I was in a store and I was trying to buy some breadcrumbs because I wanted to make some turkey burgers from ground beef. And so I had a recipe and it called for breadcrumbs. So I go into the store, Whole Foods, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And I say, hey, can you help me? Where's the breadcrumbs? And the young lady comes over. And not only does she show me where the breadcrumbs are, but she helps me look at, okay, this one is original. This one has an Italian flavor. This one has another flavor. And so she spends time and she helps me sort through it. And then another lady comes by and says, oh, and there's some more containers of breadcrumbs on the other side. So if you're interested, I'll take you over there. And so I got that service and I said, thank you. I appreciate you. It's like catching them doing something right and saying, thank you. I really appreciate that. And they said, oh, of course, no problem. But that's what I do when I go in the store. I say hello. I say thank you. I encourage people. And it's amazing the service that I get. So this idea of catching ourselves, catching others doing something right, this idea of focusing on what I can control and choosing to be happy, choosing to focus on what's right, not denying what's wrong, but saying, yeah, I embrace it. Say, okay, how can I generate hope from that? How can I look at it in a way that gives me access to inspiration, to power? And then this idea of little acts of kindness. You know, just saying, please, thank you. It's good seeing you. Appreciate your service. That sort of thing. But also catching myself doing something right. I was reminded talking to my friend Greg, and we were talking about it. And I said, yeah, so my friend Kobe Kyle from the Curious Leader podcast called me a couple of days ago. We had the podcast today, and he says, pick one word that we could talk about, and that'll be the theme. And so I picked love. And it wasn't a topic that they're used to talking about, especially if we're talking about leadership and competition and that sort of thing. But I picked love. And the reason I picked love is because if I think about my days, and my roommates from college will talk to you about me listening to Jimi Hendrix. And one of Jimi Hendrix's songs talks about power of love is greater than the love of power. We will know peace. And then there's the Beatles and John Lennon talking about all we need is love. And Jimi Hendrix had other songs, Message of Love, Power of Love, all of that stuff. And so love is a feeling, but it's really more about an activity. It's about, when I think about my own self-love, it's about self-care, caring for myself, responding for myself, being responsible. I'm not blaming others or denying what's happening, but embracing it and saying, yeah, I have to respond to my needs. And then the respect, just let myself be myself. And so I talk about that masterpiece within and just allowing these opportunities to let my masterpiece express itself more and more. And so that self-love is really important. And when I do that, when we love something, we help it grow. So I'm talking about self-love, but it's love of others, a love of sport, love of a practice. Like my practice is my life. If I talk about my spiritual practice, what I offer people, it's not J-O-B, it's a way of being. And so this idea of creating space between stimulus and response and making choices that are in alignment with love, alignment with openness, alignment with seeing out self and other, and catching people, seeing people's goodness, their greatness, and not getting stuck in this pathology about what's wrong, what's right, how we're separate, instead of looking at how we can be together and thinking about how can we find some peace in this time, especially during COVID, where we've been isolated, alienated, and now we're starting to get back out. And so if we're going to get back out, even with the mask on, we still can smile, we still can connect with people, but it's connecting with ourselves and realizing that if 90% of our long-term happiness is predicated on how we interpret our experience, then it behooves me, it behooves us to really understand how to generate the hope, even though we embrace things, but also hope, faith, optimism, focus on what we want, focus on what's possible. And if we can do that with the help of our friends, with the social support, and we can see it as an opportunity, as a challenge, that that's a game changer, and that we can experience the fact that the happiness is a choice.